Wilson, do honors by going first. Good.
Well, you know, you can look at the signs. We have more wilderness in this state than anyone else does. We're talking about an area that they're not even utilizing for that. We shouldn't have to give up more land to get something that's already ours. How we need to send that message loud and clear that we have all the rules and regulations you could ever possibly want to be safe in what we do. And this is our land, state of Alaska's land, and not the federal government. And I don't know about you, but it's not just this area, but the entire state. It's time to take what we promised to the state of Alaska many years ago and start utilizing it for us. Because we are in the interior hurting the worst for energy when we have the most energy available in the United States. So I appreciate everybody's going to be here, but it's going to take a lot more to get answers to those walls, and it's going to take the whole community to make it clear.
Thank you. Senator Coghill, you are direct linkage to our statehood act and pact. It's my honor to ask you to speak on behalf of Alaska.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, guys. And thank you for fed up. You know, right after I got out of the military, we had the Jimmy Carter Wilderness Lockup down here in Kantishna, and it was a violation of the Alaska Statehood Compact. We've never been able to get that settled with Congress. ANILCA came along. It was a bad law, but at least it said it was going to take no more, and from that time on, they've continued to take it more and more. So I think the 11 million acres of really tying up the National Petroleum Reserve, they want to turn it into a National Park Reserve. I think that's kind of looks like where they're headed. And it looks like Mr. Salazar is beholden to the Sierra Club, Earth Justice, and people like that, because it's not just about NPRA. It's about what BLM is doing on tying up the land for hunting and fishing. And if they are going to lock up this land, then we as a state have been violated. Even once more again, we're going to take our case to Congress more and more. So this is just one way of saying, you know, there's a group of us willing to stand up. If America does not produce more, we will only be under more control by the feds, by the environmental community. Ken Salazar right now is at the lead of the environmental community, and I think that's wrong. I think he needs to go. And I'm hoping in November we change president so we can relieve him of his responsibility. It's not been good for Alaska, and it's been lousy for America. So I think this is just one way of saying it. But the resolve from here has to be letter writing, and it's tedious talking to Department of the Interior, Bureau of Land Management, the forestry people. The Tongass people got violated hugely a few years back. The miners right now are under threat from the safety group. They call it public safety, but it's really about shutting down mines. The whole issue of the EPA, the Department of the Interior, under Ken Salazar's leadership, is how do you shut down America? I think we got to stop it. So let's stop it now.
Hallelujah.
Mayor Isaacson, please, enjoy a few comments from you. Hey, Mayor.
Jim called me up, as he did, probably many of you, and said that this action was happening. And I just wanted to let you know, I went onto the internet and found the various proposals. There's always 4 in an EIS, and the one proposal that we're looking at is going to lock up, as Senator Coghill said, 13 million acres, well, or more. So, and the other one will keep available 22 million. That's the one that we want to support. Option D, which is a no bill. The reason for that is, even though NPRA is designated as a National Petroleum Reserve, and think of that word, National Petroleum Reserve, not National Wildlife Reserve, it's tasked with needing to produce oil and gas resources in an environmentally safe manner while protecting the important biological subsistence and cultural values also found in this area. And that was from an earlier action back in 2003 when they were allowing 8.8 million acres of the NPRA for oil production. So we're going backwards when Teddy Roosevelt started the conservation movement in America and started putting aside lands, he said, to waste, to destroy our natural resources, to skin and exhaust the land instead of using it so as to increase its usefulness, will result in undermining in the days of our children the very prosperity which we ought by right to hand down to them, amplified and developed. So the proposed action right now is a 180 degrees polar opposite interpretation of what the conservation is supposed to be. The petroleum reserve is not supposed to be a wilderness reserve. It's supposed to be so that we can produce oil and gas well into our children's future without bankrupting them and without bankrupting us. The actions right now being proposed by the Obama administration is one that will definitely bankrupt America as more and more jobs are lost, less and less land is available, less and less resources are available. So I also lend my voice and say, BLM, if you want to do something productive for America and for Alaska, think about using all of this energy. Every 4 years, they're trying to lock more land away. Think about conveying more of the 103.5 million acres that was promised to Alaska in the Statehood Act that Senator Kaga was just referencing. That was promised to us, but at the present rate of transfer will take over 200 years for Alaska to finally have its land. It's up to us to make sure that land gets conveyed and to tell BLM they need to be working on what's most important to the nation, and that's the Statehood Act compliance for Alaska. God bless you. Vote no when this comes up later this year, and say option D is preferred.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilwoman Stiver, please a few words from the City of Fairbanks. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm glad to see so many people out here today. This is an important issue. You may think, oh, it's way over there, but it's not. It affects each and every one of us all the way down. There have been too many acts by the federal government to lock up our resources, and we do. We file lawsuits to open up rivers, to gain access for mining over and over again, and we already have these agreements in place, and we have to struggle and fight to keep them. So I'm glad to see everybody here, and it does. It trickles all the way down to your neighbors right here in town. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another person with us who's worked tirelessly in many, many efforts for Fairbanks for the state of Alaska. And I would like to have Craig Combo, known since first grade. All of us respect and helps us all out, say a few words in regards to this. Please, Craig. You're welcome.
Hey, I'm just a businessman in this town. My grandfather moved here in 1938. We've run a pretty successful business over the years. We've watched federal overreach creep in beyond what we ever could have imagined. What really bothers me with Mr. Salazar's and Obama's decision is we're buying our oil from 7,500 miles away. The profits from those sales are going to train terrorists how to blow up buildings by flying into them. Who would have ever considered that? I think there's very little risk to the caribou and the wildlife up there. It's proven by the initial pipeline numbers. If you look at the 7-fold increase in the Central Arctic caribou herd. But even if there was a little risk, what about the human factor? What about the folks whose kids and parents died in that tragic accident? We need to look a little bit beyond some of the minutiae that we're looking at. We need to move on. We can develop these resources responsibly. We've done it. Let's do it again. I really, really regret the decision made by Mr. Salazar, and I hope we can turn it around.
Is there anyone else who would like to say anything? Assemblyman Blanchard.
As far as just being a kid who came up to Alaska at the age of 10, my dad worked for home, and he focused on safety and compliance for making sure that they left places better than where they left them. And so life, I've kind of heard about all the protests for this or protests for that, but at the same time, the state budget depends on that pipeline being full. I have yet to hear anybody tell me that the future of Alaska looks great when the pipeline's empty. And moves like this ensure that it will be empty. It ensures that we won't have a prosperous future. As a young person who's looking forward to the next generation, it scares the heck out of me. So, I don't think you can say too many curse words. But it scares the heck out of me. So I certainly support this group here. I want to see more production in my future. I want to see good jobs for my generation. And I'm really glad to see everybody out here. Thank you very much.
You know, we all have to look on how we got here. How did I get here? How did I get here as a Republican? When I was 18 years old, I registered to vote, and I registered as a Democrat. Then Senator Cogdill brought it up. President Jimmy Carter used the Antiquities Act to shut down millions upon millions of acres with a stroke of a pen. And I felt that party left me. My father, for 10 years, was the chairman of the Democratic Party for the state of Alaska. Morris Udall, the D2 lands bill, made him leave the party. Every time I turn around, there's a Democratic administration taking away from Alaska. Just that's what they do. It's what they've always done. How did I get here? How did I get here? How did we get here? It's usually a sign of protest. Our civil right of assemblage to say, no, this is enough. Why Alaska? Why us? Why here? Why now? That's why we're here. Proud to be here with all of you, looking at this. Who would have thought that I would be here protesting the President of the United States Interior Secretary doing what I consider is a land drop from Alaska, the National Petroleum Reserve, putting it as wilderness. President Obama, that's an oxymoron. No more. Please. Jim Plackey, please, thank you for putting this together, and a few words from you.
Wow, what a beautiful day, huh? Couldn't have had it better. Oh, Pete, how you doing? Hey, I want to thank everybody for coming out on behalf of the Alaska Industry Support Alliance. We all appreciate your help. This is just the first step. This fall, I'm sure there's going to be hearings that we're going to need to go to, probably at the Carlson Center. We're going to need people to ride in. We need to defeat this. We don't need more wilderness in the National Petroleum Reserve. It's just, you know, it's the same thing as ANWR. I mean, we had a rally at the Carlson Center last spring. I mean, the Interior Department wants to lock up all ANWR. The last sliver that we have to develop oil and gas on. They want to lock that. So we don't want to hurt the country, none of us. We all live here, the pioneers, they developed this country, and we didn't ruin Alaska. We all love Alaska. We live here. So anyway, we just need to make sure that we don't lock up a national petroleum reserve. Or the same thing's going to happen. Everybody remembers what happened to the Keystone Pipeline, the pipeline that we wanted to build from Alberta to Texas. What happened? He said no. If he locks up the National Petroleum Reserve, if we ever find oil east of Prudhoe Bay, what's going to happen? He's going to lock it up. Anyway, I see Pete Kelly just got here. Pete, you want to say a few words?
Sure. Right. Morning, everyone. You know, I'm a bit of a fan of history, and I read something when I was putting together a report not too long ago, and it just the time frame of it interested me, and it was what happened in 1973 when we built the pipeline. In the pipeline was obviously completed later, but in 1973, on October 6th, the Egyptian army crossed the Sinai and went, or Suez, and went into the Sinai where there were some Israeli troops there. The Syrians attacked. Later on, other elements came in, and it began the Yom Kippur War. And it completely stunned the American political group and the business people and the American public it stunned them to realize they had given up a lot of their energy independence, and they had put it in this place that was so unstable. And that was on October 6th that they started the war. It was over by the 26th, and by November 16th, President Nixon signed the Trans-Alaska Pipeline Act. By June, dirt was flying on the road, and by 1977, we made one of the most amazing engineering accomplishments in the history of mankind. It happened like that because Americans did things. They didn't sit around and wait for people like Salazar and these whining greenies to do what needed to be done. My son was over in the Middle East. He was in the first wave of the invasion in Iraq, and he was, a lot of his friends died in that first wave. He happened to be in the company where 100 people died. And as I thought about him going over there and serving later on and how it relates to our energy independence, I began to think, do we actually respect our troops? You know, we talk about honoring our troops so much, but we won't do the things necessary to keep them out of that crazy part of the world where we have to depend on it to live, to get paychecks, to send our kids to school, to drive on this asphalt right here. We won't do that. We let these lawyers in their silk suits and their tasseled shoes in Washington, D.C., thousands of miles away, control what we do. Our founding fathers would not have put up with it. Forget them. Our fathers would not have put up with it. And we can't. Honestly, I don't know what the answer is. We're so hog-tied now. But I know this. We need to do something a little crazy. A little something that people will say, oh, you can't do that. We need to do that. We absolutely need to do that. Some tea needs to go into the harbor. I have some ideas. I don't want to campaign now. But I tell you what, we got to do something that people say, you can't do that. Because if we don't, we won't have jobs. We'll have to leave Fairbanks. We may have to leave Alaska. We're all going to be citizens of North Dakota or Texas. We'll have a little rally there of Fairbanks people who tried but failed. But we can succeed. But we have to do something that people say, you can't do that.
Start with getting rid of Obama.
Amen.
Well, like Craig says, hey Obama, I can see November from my house. Let's all vote. Let's enjoy this moment. And also, it doesn't stop here. Every little bit we can do, the hearings that'll be held, the information we can dissent, the information we can give out, this is where it starts. Jim Plackey, wonderful idea. Thank you for being here. Thank you for putting this together for us. You know, Americans have a way of venting. Fairbanks have a way of magnifying that. That's why we live here. Thank you very much. And is there anyone else who wants to say anything? Mr. Roberts, it's your neighborhood.
Well, I think on a bigger scale, what we really need to think of is the mindset that got us here. Back when Roosevelt started the conservation movement, which was a mistake. The problem was they had this mindset that government can look after these resources better than individuals and private enterprise. Well, we know that's not true. You know, we see how the forestry companies treat their forests much better than the government treats theirs. You know, our forest fires that we have around here are a testament to how poorly those forests are managed. And we see how the Tongass, we didn't need to lose that reaping of that harvest. And if private enterprise would have owned that, everything would have been fine. Forest companies lumber companies plant more trees than anyone else. You know, they are in business to stay in business, and they keep track of their resources. And we obviously, as Alaskans, we know that we keep track of our resources. When I worked on the pipeline, I mean, it's incredibly regulated. You had to keep track of spills up to a teaspoon. Bigger. So we need to change that mindset that people got in their heads that have been taught to them over the years, that government can somehow look after things better. Government is not the solution and is never the solution. They usually just get in the way of the real solution, which is individuals, people, free enterprise companies being able to take care of their resources.
how many people here live in Alaska?
Yeah.
Who can tell me what percentage of the state's owned by us as private landowners?
60.
Yeah, less than 1%. Last time I checked, it was approximately 0.6% of the state. When you got that little bit of private land, and if you're a small business owner, how can you develop an energy project that might encroach on some federal land or some state land without cutting through that red tape? You don't have the resources to go to Washington, D.C. necessarily, or Juneau and lobby to get that sort of deal cut. So to me, a lot of the problems we're having locally are because the free market's not being allowed to function, so we don't have enough private land. Can anyone tell me what percentage of the state the feds own, or they control? Yeah, so somewhere, yeah, roughly 2/3. We're one of 50 equal states, and they control 2/3 of us. Can we imagine the feds going into Rhode Island and controlling 2/3 of it, turning it into national parks?
How about North Dakota?
Or North Dakota? I know we're not the highest percentage, but we're pretty darn high. And I don't think that's okay. We're not going to have real, structural, meaningful energy solutions from the free market until we can increase that percentage of the state that's owned by private hands. That's why we're all talking about all these different solutions that involve the state, because it's difficult for the little man to come in and fix our problems, but they can. And they can't when we have people like Obama and we have people like Salazar in Washington dictating to us what we have to do as a state. This is our land. We're one of 50 states. We're equal. And that's what this is about. This is the bigger issue. Can Washington, D.C. turn us into their colony and tell us what to do? And I say no. I say no, they can't. I say we're one of 50. We're equal. Get out. Give us our state back.
There's a gentleman who came here, and I'd like to have him speak a few words. His father was a wonderful person, Mayor of Fairbanks, Bill Walley, and I'd love to see Perry say a few words. He's running for city council. Mr. Walley.
I'll just make it short and sweet. I mean, listen, we're from Alaska. This election coming up, it's a game changer. I know that Alaska, we vote been Republican all the way through on these presidential elections. It's not an important state for them, but I know we have a lot of relatives and cousins and uncles and all that out in the lower 48. And I would encourage everybody to call, and we need to get this changed because this is ridiculous. Can you imagine 4 more years?
No.
Could you?
Not even close.
Okay, so I would just encourage everybody to pick up the phone and call your relatives, call your friends, call people you went to high school with that are out of state, and encourage them to change this administration. They're ruining the country, and they're ruining the families.
Also, we have opportunities on the Republican side. We have the National Convention going. Get Mr. Clary information to protest this on a national basis. We have Senator Murkowski's office here. We have Senator Begich's office here. We have Representative Young's office here. There's 2 national conventions. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, you're in Alaska. That's first and foremost. If you're not that first, leave the state. Simple as that. Thank you all for being here.
All right. All right, let's go to war.